be back with Democrats. Before I begin, I do want to talk about what's ahead of us as Democrats in this cycle and what we face, what we're up against, and why it's important that we win. But I want to thank Jack Billion for all he's done, Rick Coffey at the party. We've done a tremendous job. They've been terrific to work with. I've been back with him now for, I guess, about a year. I've been back in the state, and they've been terrific. And so thank you, Jack, for that, and for all you've done, and for all the Democrats that are here tonight. I also want to thank Senator Dakota. I grew up in Mitchell, South Dakota, and I grew up in a family that wasn't very political. My mother, in fact, was a Republican. I didn't have a father. My father died when I was a couple months after I was born. But living in the town at the time when I was growing up, you didn't really appreciate the jewel that we had in Georgia government. But as I got into politics, as I worked into it as a boy, and I worked in Senator McGovern's campaign in 1974. I was actually Senator McGovern's paper boy in Mitchell, South Dakota for a couple of years. And I think I normally got him the paper every day. But I didn't know who this man was until I started to see, until our family started to see why politics mattered. My father, as I said, died when I was a couple months old. I was the youngest of 8 children. The oldest was 11, and my mother had to raise the 8 children alone. And she used to tell the story that shortly after my father died, we lived on a farm in Alec. Dad had a hardware store in Alec, had to sell it, didn't have life insurance. I don't know if everybody did back then, but he did. So she sold it, and then she went to work, quote unquote, full time off the farm while she was trying to raise 8 children on the farm. And she tells the story that shortly after she died, she got a check in the mail from the Social Security Administration. And she didn't know what it was. So she called the Social Security Administration and said, I think you made a mistake. He sent me this check, and I don't know why. I don't even know that I paid in. I don't know. They said, no, Mr. Jarding, you're entitled to that check. Your husband had paid in over the years. You've got 8 kids to raise. Use that check to raise those kids. And my mother would tell the story that for the first time in her life, she looked and said, there's something about government that matters. They're doing something. It wasn't a handout. She went to work. She struggled. But the government did something to give a hand up. And it meant something. And she told the story with pride that her government took care of her at a time of need. She told another story as the years went on that I'll never forget. That she said that she always regretted when our oldest, or her oldest daughter, my sister Mary, would come to her and say she wanted to go to college. She said, I dreaded the day because I knew I would have to tell her she can't go. So when that day came and Mary said, Mom, I want to go to Mount Martin. I want to go to college. She said, Mary, I've been dreading this day, but I've tried to hide it from you kids the best I could, but I don't have the money. We get by every month. We don't get by with much, but I haven't been able to save for you. You can't go. You'll have to do something else. And Mary said, no, Mom, I can go. They have student loans that I can get that the government has. They have grants that I can apply for. I think I can go and pay for it. And my mother again, now for a second time, said, what is it about government that can do these great things for me? And she came to believe that when I was growing up, grew up a Catholic, and there were 4 boys, and she always wanted us to go into the priesthood. She wanted us to go to the priesthood because the ministry helped. The ministry did good. The ministry took the best that we have as individuals and we tried to give it to others. And as she got older and she saw what government did, she started to say, well, I want you to go into the priesthood or go into government. Believe it or not, for those of you that know me, I actually did attend seminary. Lived with the priest at O'Gorman for a time, and decided that the priesthood wasn't right for me. It wasn't to call it, an honorable calling. Had a wonderful time. It's a wonderful place. They're wonderful people. But I did gravitate back to government. I gravitated back to government because it matters. It matters in your life. And we have a man amongst us tonight in George McGovern that arguably affected more lives, that bettered humanity, that invested in the human mind and the human spirit and the human being more than any other man in our time, and that's George McGovern. I can't thank you enough. Tonight I want to talk about why this election is so important. We hear it a lot. By the way, I've said it myself. You go into an election cycle and you say, this is the most important election in a generation. The most important election I can remember. Well, guess what, folks? This one is. We have an opportunity to change the face of the world and the face of this country on November 4th. It is not a slam dunk. These things do not come easy. But what has gone on in the last 7 years dictates to me, at least, why this is the most important election of my life. I turned 50 this summer. My first election, first time I was able to vote was 1976. We've had a lot of important elections. But I got to tell you, when you look at the gist of what George Bush and his cronies and his cheerleaders and his spokespeople have done to this country, it scares you, it should shake us to our core, and it should remind us that we need to return Tim Johnson to the Senate and Stephanie Chamberlain to the House. We need to make sure that we elect legislators in South Dakota, take that Senate back, pick up seats in the House, make sure that we elect Barack Obama president so that we can change the world and fulfill our dreams. Our nation, I believe, in the last 7 years has been taken over. It's been hijacked by forces of greed and evil. Evil in the sense that they don't understand what public service is all about. These guys in Washington think it's about them. They think public service is about those who serve. It is not. Public service is about those who would be served. And these guys don't get it. Guys have laughed at the founders, have laughed at the thoughts that we should have principles that say we should fight for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those aren't just words, ladies and gentlemen.